Good afternoon. Hello. Please keep eating. My name is Dorothy Bridges, and I'm the board chair of the Greater Twin Cities United Way. I'm really honored to serve as today's host and MC. On behalf of a dedicated group of volunteers known as the United Way's Planned Giving and Endowment Committee, we want to welcome you to our 2021 Legacy Society Luncheon. I see most of you have started eating. For those of you who are trying to wait for a great moment, now's the time. Please start eating. Thank you to the staff of the Metropolitan Ballroom for your service. This afternoon, we are welcoming a variety of guests. Gathered today, we have individuals who are considering a planned or endowed gift to the United Way. We welcome you. We have those who have recently given an endowment or a planned gift. Thank you so much and welcome. Finally, we have many wonderful longtime Legacy Society members who have made commitments or gifts 10, 20, or 30 years ago. That's outstanding. Thank you so much for your contribution and for your faithful support. To all of you, those considering, recent donors, and longtime loyal supporters of the United Way, we thank you wholeheartedly and welcome to our Legacy Society Luncheon today. Your support is so deeply appreciated. Today, we will report back to you on the positive impact that your giving has made in our community, especially during such a challenging time and a challenging year of 2020. We also want to give you an inside scoop on what's happening with United Way today and what our plans are for the future in 22 and beyond. To get us started, I'd like to introduce Derek Tamm, who will share what inspired him and his wife, Melinda, to join our Legacy Society. After Derek, we will hear brief remarks from John Wilgers, our president and CEO of the Greater Twin Cities United Way. So with that, welcome, Derek.
Well, I'm honored to be here today as to say a few words, but also to be a part of this Legacy Society. It's just great to be in person. And this is really cool. I'm glad that you held out and stuck with it because it would have been so much easier not to. So I really appreciate that. And quite frankly, it's an accident I'm even here in the first place. I've been involved with the Greater Twin Cities United Way for the past 9 years. My wife, Melinda, she couldn't be here today. She owns a business up in St. Cloud, actually. She commutes back and forth every day. And so she wasn't here, but both her and I have always found it very important to volunteer and contribute on a philanthropic level, both in St. Cloud, where we started our careers, and now down here in the Twin Cities. So about 10 years ago, I relocated my practice. I'm a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual, and I'm managing director, so I oversee our office. And I relocated from St. Cloud down to Minneapolis, downtown. And then when I got here, I was just really looking for a place to engage with some young professionals that were interested in not only just growing themselves, but growing the community. So I came across Emerging Leaders. And it's a group of young professionals that just want to, be a part of this. And I really, I don't know if it was written on my forehead, but in 24 months, I wound up chairing the group. And I don't know how that happened. But I've always believed that you have three things to give: time, talent, and treasure. And as a young professional at the time, I had plenty of time and I had plenty of talent. I was still trying to work on my treasure. But it was fun inspiring other young people to think financially about giving to the United Way and volunteering. Now, along my journey career-wise, I'm always helping clients trying to maximize their impact on their legacy and segmenting dollars for organizations like the United Way. I'm always a proponent of planning ahead and using time as a tailwind. And when our boys were born, We drafted our wills. My wife and I said, you know what, this is our legacy is important to us. This fits into our values. Why don't we just write this into it right now? And so we thought of the United Way in our plan. And I was visited over coffee with someone from the fundraising department at the United Way one day, and he was sharing with me how great it would be if we kept the United Way in mind for some of our retired clients. And I looked at him and I said, well, what about your non-retired clients? And he then shared what the Legacy Circle was. And I'm like, I shared with him that we were already doing that. And that's when I found out about the Legacy Society and how I became a member. But I love sharing the story because with other young couples too, because it takes a relatively small amount of sacrifice to really have a meaningful impact for the next generation. And the more we've seen about the United Way's impact, the greater our commitment is. It seems the storyline in today's world is more about how big nonprofits are too big, too inefficient, they spend too much money and things like that. And I look at it completely different. I see that as the value of the United Way. The size and scope of this organization is a foundation that allows us to actually scale sustainable change in our communities, not just host an event. I think it shows up in the greatest ways during times of financial uncertainty. That's when this light shines the brightest. I mean, if you think of the last 2 years, so many nonprofits that we're a part of helping with, they're really struggling. And where their people need them the most, they can't necessarily deliver at the level they'd like to. But you look at the United Way, helping thousands of people with mental health issues over the last couple of years, that isolation only further ignited. You think about the educational gaps that we're about to face in our communities because of this pandemic. And then you look at the resources that went to those that are greatest impacted by COVID and the racial injustice in our communities that we witnessed firsthand. This is really meaningful stuff. And Melinda and I have 2 boys. Like I said, Connor, he's a 7-year-old that loves hip hop, dancing, and math. And Colton's a preschooler with a wild imagination and loves t-ball. But nothing, this is our community today, but it's going to be their community in the future. And although the United Way, the donations we make today for their annual fund are really, really important, I think we all need to continue to see the bigger picture, just like the United Way is, about what it's going to be like generations down the road. So I just appreciate y'all giving me a hot second here to share a little bit about our story and how we've been thinking about it. But I hope you consider, if you're thinking about it, you consider the United Way and the Legacy Circle as part of your own plan giving. For those of you that have, thank you. But I also ask that you have the courage to share your story and your reasons for being a part of this with those that have built their treasures, but also with those that are still building it. Because I think together, this room and others can inspire a lot of change that can lift this organization for generations to come. So I appreciate the chance to say a few words, and I'll pass it along. So.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you, Dorothy. Hello to all the Legacy Society members. It's good to see you here today. And it is good to be here in person. We were talking about our table, about how much we'd missed a good chicken lunch. And now here we are having one. So that's really fun. A couple of days ago, I was talking to Trudy. I said, we have this Legacy lunch coming up. I said, I'm kind of thinking you need to dig deeper in your closet because the jeans and joggers you've been wearing are just not going to get it done. And so I see she did that. Thank you for going back and finding something good to wear. I will tell you, she looked at me at the same size and said, ditto to you. And so anyway, I did the same. So anyway, I'm John Wilgers, President and CEO of Greater Twin Cities United Way. Thank you for joining us today in person. I think we have some folks joining us from home. So welcome to all of you as well. Trudy and I have been members of the Greater Twin Cities Legacy Society for a number of years. I remember when we were wrestling with that decision, it was actually kind of a hard decision for us. I see Marie Ruzick in the back of the room who was working for us at the time, who probably thought we would never make the decision. So Marie, good to see you. Glad you're here. But it was really the first time we'd ever considered, a legacy gift, including this type of gift as part of our estate planning. And frankly, I thought, what's the big deal about this? And why is it so meaningful? Like all of you, my intention was this gift wasn't going to come to United Way for a long time. Okay. And so it was something that we really thought about a lot. And then the folks from United Way, Kitty and Marie and a number of them helped us understand that it is just that. It's about creating a legacy. And we had the opportunity to do something that would provide our support to our community and to United Way long after we were gone. And that's why it was meaningful. And that's why we wanted to be a part of it. So we're happy to be members of the Legacy Society. It is just that. It is creating a legacy. So I'm delighted to be with you today as president of United Way and as a fellow Legacy Society member. And I'd like to extend my deep appreciation to all of you for your longstanding partnership and commitment to our community through your gifts. Your generosity supports our mission of advocating for social good, uniting as change makers, and developing solutions in our community that none of us can solve on our own. So thank you for that. Over the past year and a half, we have faced challenges that, well, I was going to say that we could only imagine. I'm not sure we could have imagined them, if you want to know the truth. So we have faced some significant challenges. We've had COVID-19. We have had the reckoning with racism, which was sparked by the murder of George Floyd. And it created an obligation. You know, at first I was going to say it created an opportunity, but I changed that word a few minutes ago and said it didn't create an opportunity. It created an obligation for our community to face the impact of our nation's history of oppression and exclusion from opportunity. All of these things have contributed to deep racial divides and disparities in our systems. And so in partnership with our stakeholders, all of you, we are working to eliminate these disparities. And while we have a long way to go to achieve true racial justice, 2020 really did mark a transformative year. It was also a year that required United Way to respond quickly and with agility, and we were able to respond that way because of your generosity. So we're proud that United Way has a strong financial position. When we were called on by our community to act last year, one reason that we could be in that leadership role is because of our Legacy Society donors. Your support and the support of the donors that came before you and made their gifts created a foundation on which we were able to respond quickly and with confidence when our community needed us the most. We say that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and your support helps us provide for these types of things in our community in advance of when the crisis hits. Your preparedness is a wonderful gift to us, and we're grateful for your foresight and your planning that allows us to respond to the needs of our community. It's with this strong endowment. Without a strong endowment, it would have been difficult for Greater Twin Cities United Way to respond the way we did. And our endowment is a little bit different and better than most endowments. The money that's in our endowment is unrestricted dollars. Almost all of our donors do not place restrictions on the endowment money when it comes to us. And that, number one, shows a great deal of faith in United Way and the impact we can have in the community. And it really gives us the flexibility to respond to the greatest needs and distribute funds through our network of nonprofit partners that have been fully vetted, and helps us to assist individuals and families and whole communities when they're in need. So I'm proud of what we have accomplished at changemakers over the last year and a half. When we look to 2022 and beyond, we know, we've learned, the future can be highly unpredictable. But one thing you can count on is Greater Twin Cities United Way, just like you've been able to count on Greater Twin Cities United Way for over 100 years. So your gifts support how we serve the community, including our 211 resource helpline, our advocacy efforts, our partnerships with nonprofits and corporations, and through our innovation initiatives. Thanks to donors like you, 211 operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, connecting people with resources like housing, food, and other services. When we look back at 2020, and when we look at those first few months following COVID, we saw the calls into our 211 helpline increase by 300% for several months. And we learned a lot about the needs of our community through those calls and through the calls we get every day. And one of the most significant needs is housing. And that need was exacerbated during COVID when we saw people unable to pay rent, unable to pay their mortgages. And as a result, saw them slipping into housing issues and potentially even homelessness. So our 211 data showed this significant need, and it provided the urgent need that the state needed to support the housing needs in our community. Through our advocacy efforts and in partnership with coalitions like Homes for All, we use this data in conversations with our legislatures, and we were able to secure $100 million in state funding for emergency housing assistance. The state of Minnesota also partnered with Greater Twin Cities United Way to use 211 as the point of contact for tens of thousands of Minnesotans seeking these resources through programs like Rent Help MN. People would call 211. The person who answered their call would find out what their needs were. They would assess their eligibility, they would help them with applications, and they would send them to the source of funding. And that work continues with new funding yet this year. Through our nonprofit partnerships, we've been able to connect 11,000 people to housing resources last year, and we helped 1,200 families exit homelessness with safe, affordable housing. I think you'll agree that stable housing is it's key to our community's to our community's foundation, and it enables us all to be successful. And together, we're creating a community where all people thrive, regardless of their income, their race, or their place. Because of you, we'll continue to be there for our community before, during, and after the pandemic. When's that going to be? But anyway, we're going to be there before, during, and after the pandemic, providing support for the people who need it while developing innovative, long-lasting solutions. So we're getting ready. We're in the early stages of launching a campaign that focuses on breakthrough solutions to persistent challenges in our community. We have identified 4 pressing areas where we have strategically targeted initiatives that have the potential to create breakthrough change, including preventable homelessness, neighborhood scale food security, barriers to early childhood development, and education that fails to provide clear pathways to prosperity. So I'd love to tell you about all 4 of those, but I'm already getting the 1-minute sign from the back of the room, so I'm not going to do that. In the interest of time, today we're going to focus on one, and that's on housing. And so to talk more specifically about our innovative work in housing, I am excited to have Acooa Ellis, our Senior Vice President of Community Impact, share with you our preventative strategy to address homelessness in our region, a new initiative that we call Pathways Home. Acooa?
Thank you, John. Got about a foot. It is a pleasure to see your faces and to get to talk with you all about work that my team has been dreaming about and thinking about and planning for the last couple of years. Derek, I just want to say before I start that I could not appreciate more your comments. To know how the work that we're so passionate about is received and understood and impacting our broader community is a true gift. So thank you for that. As John mentioned, my name is Acooa Ellis, and I have the distinct honor of leading the Community Impact Department at the Greater Twin Cities United Way, and I am excited to talk to you all about an initiative that we call Pathways Home. Before I do that, I'll start with a bit of grounding. Let me just get myself situated here. Should have figured this out. The green button, that makes sense. Green means go, right? All right, here we go. All right, so I'll start with some grounding on how we've approached this work overall before talking more specifically about Pathways Home. As longtime partners, members of the Legacy Society, friends of Greater Twin Cities United Way, I'm sure that at some point you've heard or seen what I'm about to share, but it never hurts to be reminded about how all this work comes together so that we can address complex challenges that none of us can solve alone. You know, there's lots of talk these days about advancing equity for good reason. But my observation is that most efforts toward this end really land in the bucket of charity-centered activities. And there's been increased focus on Indigenous Minnesotans and other people of color, and all that is great, right? But true disruption of inequity requires a justice frame. That means taking a closer look at the underlying conditions that create disparate outcomes to begin with. At Greater Twin Cities United Way, I want you to know that we're approaching work toward the vision where all people thrive, regardless of income, race, or place, in a few different ways, in an effort to meet our community at various points along the continuum of lasting change toward our collective well-being. We invest in proven practices through funding multi-year general operating grants to organizations that provide direct service support to individuals. At the same time, we invest in promising strategies through co-created innovative solutions, such as Pathways Home. We work in collaboration with our partners to also create and support solutions that are formed around timely needs in our community. And then we amplify all of those results toward lasting change. And John mentioned earlier an example of us showing up at the Capitol and sharing what we've heard and what we see in our work to help advance policy changes as well. So when we talk about strengthening the connective tissue, that's a part of it. That also includes work like supporting skills development among our nonprofit partners, or leveraging our unique role as a bridge to gaps between sectors. It also might look like convening partners to learn and share best practices and what they're seeing on the ground and really share with one another. All of our work in community is aligned with our theory of philanthropy that I just shared, and in service to the long-term goals that you see before you on the screen. We see access, as John mentioned earlier, access to a home that is affordable with reliable access to nutrition and valuable food as the foundation to one's ability to thrive. We want to ensure that youth and their families are optimally prepared for kindergarten, and that they are not only thinking about their futures, but they are poised and empowered to direct them. And last but certainly not least, we're supporting work that fosters gainful employment that leads to wealth creation among adults in our region. Grant making is a large part of how we advance toward these goals, and we're known more consistently for the multi-year operating grants that we now refer to as our holistic grant making, which you see at the bottom left. If you can see, for those in the back of the room, the back we talk about our holistic grants. But our breakthrough initiatives live in this bottom right quadrant, and that is our innovation section. This represents work that is emergent, poised to harness our community's most creative thinking and collective effort toward closing long-standing gaps with and for our neighbors. While each challenge is unique, we have developed a pretty consistent approach to our innovation. So this slide represents a very high-level depiction of our approach to innovation. We start by listening, a very important aspect of our work and our commitment to equity. Listening to those who are closest to the challenges because we believe they're also closest to the solutions. We do that in our work to seek to address using our position at the nexus of multiple sectors and disciplines to co-create and test solutions, which in turn then get amplified in the connective tissue work that I mentioned a moment ago. This is to not only impact how a problem is viewed, but to share promising strategies and change the trajectory of what is possible in the future. Each of the breakthrough initiatives offer the opportunity to lean into a surgical approach to long-standing, complicated, and often messy challenges. All the easy work has been done, so we're tackling the hard ones. The way that we've scoped these projects allows us the space to test, to learn, and bring to scale answers that will yield ripple effects on systems and the individuals impacted by those systems for years to come. In short, the Breakthrough Campaign presents donors with the opportunity to break through sometimes generational cycles of unactualized potential. Now, as John mentioned, housing is incredibly important to us. In fact, it is the #1 reason why people consistently call the 211 resource helpline. It serves as the nucleus of our impact strategy. It's the basis upon which, from our perspective, educational success and economic opportunity build. The work to effectively end veterans' homelessness offers us a bit of hope as well as guidance that a targeted approach can and will work in our community. Now, the nonprofits and the government agencies that respond to homelessness in the Greater Twin Cities United Way, they offer a really good set of proven services, such as case management, rent assistance, job training, and mental health care. These supports are proven to help people who are experiencing homelessness achieve stability. However, they're not available to someone unless they're already experiencing homelessness, and that's an important point I want you all to keep in mind. When I was co-chairing the Governor's Housing Task Force a couple of years ago with Jean Crane from Bremer Bank, it became really clear to us that there was a segment of our state's population that was reliably underserved with tremendous racial implications. In particular, people extremely vulnerable to becoming homeless in the next year include youth exiting foster care and adults exiting incarceration. People often move from foster care or corrections into precarious housing. They're required to have a first place to rest, but it's often precarious without supports to gain greater independence. And by navigating challenges like employment, budgeting, and relationships, they often find themselves shortly after release into homelessness. But because at the time of release, they're not yet homeless and often not parents or having dependents, very few services are available to them. Many subsequently end up on the streets, and then they may enter the homelessness response system and gain access to proven services only after having lost valuable time and experienced the harm of living on the streets. According to Wilder's most recent homelessness study, which was done in 2018, the homelessness rate per 10,000 individuals within a given racial group was as follows: 6 for every 10,000 white Minnesotans, 67 for all non-white Minnesotans, and 95 per every 10,000 Black Minnesotans, 16 per every 10,000 Minnesotan overall. So you can just hear in those numbers a pretty significant disparity. Now, a justice-based lens, going back to my earlier comment, begs the question, why? Why is that? Well, research tells us that there is a strong connection between prior systems engagement and eventual unsheltered homelessness. For youth who are served by one or more nonprofit partners, for example, people under the age of 24 were the most likely age group to have experienced more than 8 episodes of homelessness. Just think about that. So by the time you're 24, probably earlier, to have experienced 8 different episodes of homelessness. What does that mean for your ability to actualize your potential or what your future holds for you? When you account for the disproportionate removal of Indigenous, Hispanic, and Black youth from homes, which is a proxy for child protection systems engagement, you can see this initiative has a strong tie to racial justice. Additionally, 30% of adults interviewed in the last triennial survey on homelessness done by Wilder had a prior criminal conviction on their record. Think about what we know to be true about systems engagement or criminal justice systems engagement along racial lines. So what does this look like commonly for a person who's exiting incarceration? I'm going to give you an example of a person named Anna. And Anna's story reflects one that we actually heard. It's not just made up. It actually is a story that we encountered in our work through the Justice for All initiative. Anna has been convicted of felony assault for shooting an abusive partner that has spent 14 months in prison. And she has spent 14 months in prison as a result. In that time, Anna has lost her job. She's lost her apartment since she wasn't there to pay rent, had her kids placed in foster care, and then lost her health care since she couldn't renew it while she was locked up. Upon release, Anna shares that her exit plan is to go live with her sister. She's not able to get access to the state's homeless response system at this time or emergency shelter, because she's technically not considered homeless. She's, though, given referrals to and is told that she has to meet with a bevy of folks, including her probation officer, Child Protective Services in order to get her children back in her custody, a county worker to apply for county insurance or additional support, maybe childcare support. And all of these folks, she's got to meet with and work with during standard working hours. So Anna's goal is to finish up training for a commercial driver's license. But in the meantime, her sister's family and her family are sharing a space that is just too small. I don't know if any of y'all have lived with your siblings and their children. You can relate. They're constantly running out of groceries. So she eventually asks Anna to leave. She hasn't been able to find a job because she's been meeting with all these people trying to get things back in order, right? So she doesn't have anywhere to go. She doesn't have resources to tap into, and her exit plan only covered her moving into her initial placement, which was at her sister's house. This challenge is made more pressing by the profoundly deficient supply of housing opportunities affordable to people with low incomes. And you know what was interesting to me when we were doing the governor's housing task force was that that challenge was even more pronounced in greater Minnesota for multiple reasons. Stop me after this. I could talk to you all day about housing. Eventually, Anna ends up going to a shelter. Only then is she able to find some support, and that is dependent upon a shelter bed being available to Anna. That's a whole nother conversation. So far, I've focused on the drain of human capital that homelessness creates. And we know that for some folks, the moral imperative is interesting. It tugs at our heartstrings, but I want you to know that there's also a compelling economic case for addressing this issue. Greater Twin Cities United Way engaged Wilder Research to help answer the question, what are the individual and societal costs of each of these issues in the Greater Twin Cities? In other words, what's the potential economic benefit to our region in addressing these issues? Wilder's findings affirm our belief that intense, targeted investment is urgently needed. I'll read you a couple of passages from the economic benefits report done last year for this initiative. Oops, I'm gonna go back. Ignore that. Providing stable housing to formerly incarcerated adults experiencing homelessness could generate public savings of over $1,000 per person per month. For those who have a long history of alternating homelessness and incarceration, providing stable housing along with supportive services could generate public savings of over $15,000 per person per year. If a Twin Cities supportive housing intervention were to achieve similar results for the 10% of formerly incarcerated adults who incur the greatest cost of homelessness, they would generate a total savings of $3.24 million per year. Another compelling passage, as if that wasn't enough. If all Twin Cities youth in foster care were stably housed after they age out of the system, society could save at least $1.2 million per youth. For the estimated 300 Twin Cities youth, and when we say youth, we're thinking ages 18 to 24, those who have experienced homelessness in 2018 after exiting foster care, this cost adds up to $359 million over their lifetime, just for those who were experiencing homelessness in 2018. I suspect that these numbers, though, are gross underestimates. It's not possible for us to capture the ripple effects of one person's change trajectory, and I'll use myself as an example. So I'm a first-generation college grad, and I will tell you that my family and I muddled our way through college. My roommates snuck me food when I couldn't pay my bill because we hadn't figured out the financial aid system completely. No one before me in my close family had gone to college when I went. Everyone after me did. There's no way for us to fully capture the impact of just changing one life, right? A gap exists. Oops, I'm out of order. A gap exists where people are not homeless enough to access services. Through the Pathways Home initiative, Greater Twin Cities United Way intends to stand in that gap, as we do so often, as we did significantly last year. Over 5 years, Pathways Home will work with nonprofit and public partners to break the pipeline into homelessness for youth exiting foster care and adults exiting incarceration. I want you all to know that we've been super intentional about how this initiative is designed, and it is designed to create a strong racial equity impact in addition to stemming the flow into homelessness. homelessness. Youth exiting foster care and adults exiting incarceration are two populations in which people of color are vastly overrepresented. Compounded with the fact that people of color disproportionately experience homelessness, as evidenced by the numbers that I shared with you earlier, it has become evident that transitions from foster care or incarceration are a pipeline into homelessness, particularly for people of color. And by disrupting this pipeline, we disrupt inequity in service to our theory of philanthropy. Now, this initiative is also designed to achieve permanent change that lasts beyond Greater Twin Cities United Way's catalytic investment by freeing up costly emergency housing and building the case for increased public and private investment in preventative measures, establishing connections to shared data and case management among currently siloed partners. That often happens at the state, some of you may know. Increasing access to underutilized services and refining administrative policies. If we go back to Anna's story, what if, just kind of close your eyes and dream with me, Anna had an aftercare caseworker from her community who met with her before she left to develop a really, really solid exit plan. What if Anna's caseworker helped coordinate all those meetings with those individuals that she needed to talk to? What if that caseworker could also offer Anna a rental subsidy or grocery money or a host home, to help her get solid footing? What if there was a network of organizations conspiring together for Anna's success, even if her exit plan fell apart? This network provided access to job training, placement and retention, education resources, family support, etc. All of those things to help Anna and her children achieve her goals. We can make this a reality, you all. So here's the plan. By making proven services available sooner for this highly vulnerable group, Pathways Home can prevent homelessness, alleviate demand for emergency housing, and permanently improve systems. In practice, what that will look like is funding partners to provide preventative services, acknowledging that success for diverse groups of people, partners, and communities will require a variety of practices. We will support a multitude of additional activities toward our shared outcome. In all cases, our measure of effectiveness will be the number of people who maintain stable housing after 12 and 24 months. Providing novel funding to prevent homelessness will allow us to identify and proliferate the most effective supports for this vulnerable population. Pathways Home will essentially build our region's capacity to prevent homelessness. Acknowledging that our systems operate in silos that exacerbate homelessness, we will develop infrastructure to facilitate collaboration among child protective services, departments of corrections, and service providers. As part of that collaboration, together we will make the case that these institutions play a formal role in preventing homelessness for those who interact with them and help them identify ways to be a part of the solution. Learnings from this initiative will reveal and build a case for needed policy changes at the state, county, and local level to fund expansion of effective practices, but also to improve the way work is done in these systems. Examples of that could include preventing corrections institutions from discharging people into homelessness, or positive youth development training for child protective service workers. Additionally, we'll embark on a campaign to help change the narrative about youth and others who are exiting these systems, to recognize that they are vibrant members of our community and they are not disposable. As you can tell, I'm incredibly passionate about this work and grateful to each of you for your commitment. Thank you for coming out today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the investments that you've made and that you are considering. All of that is so greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Acooa. What an inspiring presentation. Preventing homelessness is an example of how United Way leans in and remains a leader in this community. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Chad Bester for a few words about why he and his wife, Janel, became Legacy Society members. Following Chad, we will then hear from Cathy Muggee, who along with her husband, John, is the co-chair of the Plan Giving and Endowment Committee.
Love hearing Acooa speak. Every time it's like, it just totally re-energizes, the whole reason that we're here. It's been too long, so thanks much. This is my wife, Janel. We were recently asked just to share a couple moments or thoughts how we wound up here. We're going to start with a duet, but then she reminded me that I'm a terrible singer. So that wasn't going to work. So thanks for the opportunity today. It was frankly, it's kind of neat for us. We made the decision a few years ago, so it's a good opportunity for us to kind of revisit, remind ourselves why we made the decision, which was, again, kind of re-energizing. So it was actually a really neat exercise for us. I should probably start by thanking Emily Seifers. I wish she was here today. It's really her psychic abilities that led us here. Because before the conversation, Janel and I didn't even know that we wanted to leave a legacy to United Way. Fortunately, Emily did, and she helped us understand that. I feel a little tongue-in-cheek, but I'm really appreciative and impressed by the work that all of you donor officers do. I mean, you're really doing God's work, and you're reverberating throughout the community. I think it's just so important. So how do we choose to join today, or join this great society of pretty impressive group of people in the room? If you're here, it's because you've done something right in life, would be my speculation. So for us, we figured out it came down to really three kind of primary reasons. So my professional career, much like Derek, I'm also in the financial services industry. I run a wealth management practice. So we help clients make these, big, difficult, life-changing decisions. Frequently that's part of our job. Well, number one, when we're approaching a situation like this, before you get too far, you have to determine, does it make sense on paper? When you look back, when you look back and say, wow, you know what? Even from an objective outside person, this makes sense. So the numbers behind it, became pretty easy. In our industry, it's very, very common when people have a philanthropic goal, you have them look at their IRA. And if they're, lucky enough to be in that top tier, when they pass away, that IRA will be hit 50% roughly estate taxes. And after that, your kids will be hit with income taxes. If you leave it to your kids, they pick up maybe 30 or 40% of it. So just to use an easy number, if it's $1 million you want to pass on to your kids, they only get 300 or 400 grand. We have 3 kids, so that gets, kind of broken down. And again, I don't think, this dollar amount is going to change our kids' lives. But if you leave $1 million to United Way, I guarantee it's changing lives. It's probably changing hundreds of them. So it was a pretty easy test, because then the more, kind of basic planner side of me says, okay, yeah, but really you take 300 or 400 grand and turn it into $1 million with one decision. I mean, that's incredible. And that's a unicorn. We don't get to do that in our industry. So number 2 is a little more opaque. So I'm sure many of you have heard Steve Jobs, famous, stay hungry, stay foolish. I'm not going to quote the normal part of that. So part of it is kind of, it's something on the lines of death is quite likely life's greatest agent of change. It clears away the old to make way for the new. And keep in mind, he's speaking to a group of 22-year-olds. And he says, right now, you are the new, but someday not too long from now, you will be cleared away and to make way for the next new. And that to me, I keep it up in my closet. She makes fun of me all the time, rightfully so. I got a bunch of quotes. That's one of my favorite ones, because it's a constant reminder how finite life is, what a short period of time we have on this earth to make an impact and hopefully help a few people along the way. But this is one way you get to cheat just a little bit, because if you leave it, a meaningful amount through your estate, boy, you get to kind of reach back, from the grave and give a helping hand to somebody who needs it, even though your time has passed. That's the part that just made me feel good. The biggest one, of course, is our family. So this is where her and I got to have some really interesting and passionate conversations. But you want to impart these values upon your children, right? And in our family, we have a bunch of these goofy little mantras that you'll probably laugh at, and that's fine. But our kids are 9, 7, and 5, and so we'll say things like, we want to teach them what it means to be a bester, something they can be proud of being. So of course, for us, our faith is an important thing. Things like working hard. So besters work hard. Besters never give up, which is funny when a 5-year-old is frustrated and wants to stop doing something and try to get her go, never give up. But that's a big one. And besters, we help people. If we have the opportunity or the ability to help people, we help people. And that's something that we're trying to impart, at an early age. It's going to be tough. It's kind of an ongoing challenge. I hope that they see what we do, through our involvement in committees and boards and giving. But I think this one is really a special and a unique one. And then they're going to look back, when our time is come and gone, and they're going to say, hey, decades ago, hopefully, Mom and Dad found it to be so important that helping people live on past their lifetime, that they made this decision, regardless, not even knowing where things were going or how long it would be. And if we can take those values and pass them on, we might even get an extra generation out of the few bucks that we've found to make a difference. So that was really the biggest one for us. If you're in the room, you've probably made a couple of pretty good financial decisions, and I think that a lot of us share very similar concerns that money should be here to help people, but oftentimes for your children, a life of privilege, oftentimes ends up hurting them instead. I think if we can instead, through my career, I found one correlation, well, a few. The biggest correlation with money and happiness is taking that money to help other people. And we can impart that into the future generations. We've at least done part of our job. So that's it. Thanks so much, for allowing us to share a couple of thoughts with you briefly, and I'm really proud to be part of this group.
That was powerful. So Chad, Janet, thank you so much. Derek also. I don't know about you, but for me, hearing other people's stories and what inspired them to give just is so moving. So thank you to everyone. So I'm Cathy Muggee, co-chair of the Plan Giving and Endowment Committee, along with my husband, John. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. Fellow donors, and for making this planned gift to the Greater Twin Cities United Way. As John Wilgers said earlier, it's your generosity, your planfulness that's really created a firm financial basis for the United Way that they can rely on. That foundation is critical to the success of the network of over 100 plus agencies, that nonprofits who really are engaged in making change and delivering results to our communities. You heard in the area of homelessness, early childhood education, jobs, just a variety of areas. And it's so critical to all of us. At this point in time, we're grateful to have a $59 million endowment. And that is currently generating $2.2 million every year to support life-changing work. And that endowment fund reflects the collective gifts of many who have gone before us, and we're grateful to their leadership years ago in remembering the United Way through a legacy gift. We're also grateful for the future gifts that are pledged. Collectively, these gifts add up to over $40 million. That is an amazing commitment, and thank you all. We know that all of this success traces back directly to the generosity of individuals, couples, and families. It's my honor now to recognize a number of groups within our Legacy Society donors. Please take a moment. I'm not sure, it looks like this is going a little faster than I am. So these are the donors that have passed away, and everybody will get this information at the end. So if you miss some of the names, I just know that this will be sent out to you. So you can have a chance to look at them. So these are the ones who have passed away. We hold them in our hearts, and they have been gone since we were last together, September of 2019. And then if we can move ahead, we would like to, thank you, warm memories and gratitude. These Legacy Society members whose gifts have been received in the last 2 years, again, since we were last together. And lastly, we'd like to honor the Legacy Society members who've notified the United Way of new gifts or reaffirmed estate and endowment gifts since 2019. So thank you. And lastly, you will see the list of all the Legacy Society members, 320 households and growing. Whether you recently made your commitment or did so years ago, thank you so much. Again, you will have this information so you can look at it at a later point. You may read, unless you read a whole lot faster than I do. So the United Way's Legacy Society draws its strength from 2 pillars: past gifts received and future gifts planned. Those 2 pillars of the endowment fund provide the stability for the United Way to not only continue, but to expand its work. I'd like to respectfully ask now, because you knew this is a donor lunch, so there would be an ask, right? So to each of our society members for your help in continuing to grow the Legacy Society. The first starts with each one of us who are members. For John and me, we made our Legacy Society commitment, I can say this, but not fast, several years ago. And since then, the market has been favorable, which is great. We like that. And so recently we asked ourselves, could we do more? And at the end, we decided to make 2 changes. The first is to designate a gift for now. So to support one of the current initiatives, such as Pathways Home. And so we're focused on the 80 by 3 initiative. So that is also a very exciting area, and John mentioned that. The second one is to update our legacy commitment so that it will reflect a portion of the estate as opposed to just a fixed dollar amount. And that ensures that going forward, our planned percentage that goes different places will be in line with that. And so that is a change that you might want to consider also. Market's been good to you, perhaps it would work for you. So all of us can be the change, both in the future and right now. And another great way for Legacy Society members to help us is to bring that listening ear. We've heard about listening several times today, including listening to all of the needs that of the homelessness for Pathways Home. So what do I mean by that listening ear? That's what happens when a Legacy Society member hears a family or member or friend say, you know, they want to make a lasting difference. They want to make a change. When our listening ear hears that, you can simply say, have you thought about the United Way? And I can tell you that John and I were introduced to that thought. We hadn't really thought about it early in our lives, you know, again, accumulating money, 3 kids, how do you manage this? But thinking about what is here. And somebody said, you know, what about, this is something we're planning to do. And initially it was a coworker. And then after that, it was more often with a financial advisor. So critical role. And so that simple, so important act of mentioning the United Way's name is critical. And along with that, sharing that you are a Legacy Society member, as well as the reason why you care, why this is important to you. As we heard with those testimonials today, it's critical. That's what touches the heart. And that's what makes us think, what's possible? What else could we do with this? So you can be that inspiration. You can plant that seed now. Be the change, both in the future and now. Thank you so much.
Wow, Cathy, thank you so much. There are a few names on there that I recognize, and it's always a good feeling when you're in that kind of company. So I appreciate it. This concludes our luncheon and our presentation. Please feel free to take the floral arrangements that are at your tables. Thank you all for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And thank you so much for all that you do for United Way and to our community.